Hey there guys, got a video here for you today on a project that we started on the channel a little while ago now but never got around to finishing. That is the Anschutz 9015 in my benchrest stock. So the rifle itself started out as a Anschutz 9015 HP in the Hunting 1 stock. Then I've gone ahead and made some upgrades and little modifications to it to make it my own, as well as making the entire stock as well as all of the adjustable pieces on the back here. So we'll go through a few things, starting off with the adjustments at the back here. So we have an adjustable cheek piece, an adjustable bag rider at the bottom here, as well as an adjustable butt piece. The only thing that I didn't make was the adjustable butt piece. That's a Gearman one. It came up at a really good price and I really couldn't say no, so I just bolted that on the back. All of the adjustable parts were made by me though, so the adjustable length of pole in the back here, as well as these two support rods. And if we look on this side, we have the lock, so the lock is actuated by that screw there. You loosen that and you can pull the entire butt pad in and out to adjust the length of pole. We also have the adjustable bag rider at the bottom here, which is controlled by the thumb screw, the same as the cheek piece on the other side. So the cheek piece is adjustable by that thumb screw there. Then to lock it all off, we have the 4 grub screws in the side here, so 2 at the top and then 2 at the bottom. At one point I did want to do all of this with just knobs rather than grub screws, so that you loosened them, then you could just do it all toolless. However, when I actually got the knobs installed on the side, I didn't like the way it looked, and to be honest with you, with the cheek piece and the butt pad, you don't ever really need to touch them after they've been set. So having the knobs on the side just was a bit of a pain. You do adjust the bag rider up and down quite a bit, or I am at the moment, but to be honest with you, with the weight of the rifle pushing down and the bag on the bottom, I don't really find myself needing to use the locks. But whatever the case, the bag rider at the bottom here is just adjusted up and down by the thumb screw. So as you can see, screwing in pulls the bag rider up closer to the center point of the stock, then loosening it just moves it down slightly. The same can be done with the cheek piece. If we loosen off the grub screws in this side, then flip the rifle over, we can adjust the cheek piece by just spinning this wheel here. So obviously going out increases the length of the cheek piece, then coming in reduces that length once again. Now to begin with, I had these adjustments here on ball screws, but I moved away from this idea as the ball screws themselves were really quite heavy, and to adjust them without a proper ball screw nut, the action wasn't as smooth as I would have liked. So I just scrapped the ball screw idea and just went over to a conventional thread. But I am really quite happy with how the mechanism came out. It seems to work really nice and smoothly, and I haven't had any major problems with it so far. The 2 locking grub screws, these ones here, just clamp up onto the adjuster rods themselves and stop them from moving, so you don't need to do the grub screws up really tight. And then the butt pad at the back is done slightly differently. It's a split clamp, so as you can see there, the center point of the adjuster is split. So when we loosen this, we can just pull the butt pad out nice and easily. And then as we tighten it up, it just brings this part closer to this part, clamping the 2 holes there. So it's really nice and simple. Moving on to the stock itself, it started out as one lump of laminate, then I cut all the inletting out to suit the action, as well as doing some of the more decorative features on the front, such as the benchrest plate, this piece at the bottom, as well as the slots in the side. And then once I had all of that done, I handed the stock over to my dad and he carved all the decorative features, as well as the things like the grip and all that sort of thing. And he did an absolutely amazing job. The stock fits me like an absolute glove. Everything is pretty much perfect for me personally. And I really like the way it looks. It's big and it's bulky, but it does the job absolutely beautifully. Moving on to the action itself, I did a few videos on the Anschutz showing off various things. One thing we did do was bore the plenum out inside the block, and that just made the rifle work a little nicer. That is a fairly common mod. The other thing I'd done as well is drill out the bottom of the action, tap it, and then put a gauge in the bottom so that we could see the current set reg pressure. The Anschutz is quite interesting because it has an externally adjustable regulator, and you can adjust the regulator both up and down while the rifle is pressurized, so having the gauge on the bottom for tuning purposes is quite handy. Apart from that, everything else inside the block is 100% standard. We're using the original stabilizer system as well as the original adjustments on the factory trigger, and for now we are just using it as a bare barrel, but I do want to make a stripper to go on the end. I do have a mod that I screw on the end when I'm practicing and plinking, but for the bench rest cards I always do it without anything on the barrel itself. And then at the front we do also have the angled gauge bracket as well as the Foster fitting under this cap here to allow us to fill the rifle. The standard Anschutzes, to fill them what you have to do is unscrew the cylinder, connect that up to your dive bottle and fill it that way. That's a bit of a pain if I'm honest with you, so what I ended up doing was making an angled gauge bracket with a Foster quick fitting on the end here so it's nice and easy to fill. Ratworks make a quick fill adapter which you unscrew the original gauge out the end there, screw that piece in, and then you can use a fill probe. But I wanted to move the gauge from the end of the cylinder to the side so that you could read the pressure on the rifle without having to look down the barrel or move the rifle from the firing line. Ignore the gauge that's on the side there for now, that's just a temporary measure. What I'm going to end up doing is just putting a digital segment one on the side there, but for now this is the only gauge I had spare. With that said though, the next thing I want to do is take the rifle downrange and do a 25 meter bench rest card with it. So let's go. Right then, and here we have our setup. At the back I have a 14A protector bag, and at the front I have the Smart Reloader rest. The rest is not brilliant, but it does allow me to get the right height at the front, relevant to the target, and then I can adjust the height to suit the different rows as we move through the target. I am looking to upgrade this to a coaxial rest at some point, but for now this is what I've got. With that said, on to the shooting. Our target is out at 25 meters and I'm taking a single shot at each of the targets. I'm using unweighed, unsalted pellets straight from the tin into the back of the barrel, and the pellets are the 8.44 grain JSB Schultz. The scope that I'm using is the Delta Striker with the trigger cam attached to it. I'm at around 35 magnification, and the small amount of movement you can see in the reticle is a combination of my heart rate and my breathing cycle. I should also mention that the rifle is shouldered but rested. This means my shoulder is against the butt pad and my cheek is contacting the cheek rest, but the bottom of the stock is on our bag. I mention that because of the different classes of shooting, and for those not familiar with 25 meter bench rest scoring, I'll explain that very briefly when we mark the card. With that said, I have cut out most of the movement around between shots, but the total time to shoot this card was around 17 minutes. It would have been much faster with a coaxial rest, as a lot of the time was spent adjusting the rests between rows. That is something I am looking into at the moment. I quite like the Sebrest AR250 as it's small and compact, but if you have a recommendation for a front rest, let me know in the comments. Also, if you want to see more 25 meter bench rest stuff, let me know. If there's enough interest, I could probably do a monthly bench rest video or maybe even a little competition. But there we have it, there's the full card complete. The next thing to do is take it over to the bench and get it marked. We did have one flyer in the middle, but overall I'm really happy with how the Anschutz shot. and the flyer was more than likely related to the ammunition and not the performance of the rifle. Right then, so here we have our card. The total score was 250 with 18 X's. The flyer, this one at the bottom here, did plug using the official scoring plug gauge. I'll talk more about that in a second. And we did also have a few very close X's, although unfortunately they just didn't quite plug. For those not familiar with 25-meter bench rest, I'll go over it very briefly. To start off with, we have an A3 sheet of card with 25 scoring targets printed onto it, these ones in the blue. The ones along the side in red are just sighters and are not used to calculate the final score. They're just for shooting to make sure that your rifle is shooting where it should be. The aim of the game is to completely destroy this center ring here, so this small one in the very center. Destroying this completely awards us with 10 points and an X marking, like this target here. The center has been completely obliterated, and that would be 10 points with an X mark. Hitting but not destroying the center target awards us with 10 points, and then if we were to hit this next ring out and not this inner ring, that would be a 9, 8, 7, 6, and then so on and so forth. The max possible score on a target is 250 points with 25 X's, and believe me when I say, when you're actually shooting one of these cards, it is a lot harder than it looks. Another thing to keep in mind is that these cards can be shot with both a 177 and a 22 rifle, and because of that, to mark the cards you need a scoring plug gauge. The gauge itself, this flange here, is slightly oversized of a 22 pellet, and it gives a definitive hole size so that you can mark the cards nice and accurately. Obviously, as we shoot a target, the pellet goes through it, then the paper closes up around the pellet, so it doesn't produce a perfectly clean hole. The gauge allows us to mark things nice and accurately, and it keeps things consistent throughout the entire process. So I'll just show you that in action. If we take a look at this one down the bottom here, you can see that on first inspection, the pellet has not made contact with the center ring, and if we were not using the plug gauge, this would be marked as a 9. However, with the plug gauge installed, you can see the gauge itself is making contact with the center ring, so that would be marked as a 10. It is very close, but if we take it nice and close, you can see that it is actually contacting there. There is not white space between the gauge and the hole, so that would be a 10. If we take a look at another target, say this one in the top left, if we take a very close look, you can see that there still is a small amount of ink on the top left side of the hole, but with our plug gauge installed, that's completely gone and there is only white space there, so that would be marked as an X. Luckily, I didn't score any 9s on this card, but I will just show you what a 9 would look like if we poke the gauge through a hole. As you can see there, the gauge itself has not made contact with the center circle, but it has made contact with the 9 ring. So a pellet that landed in this location would score a 9. But there we have it. I do want to mention I am by no means an expert on 25-meter bench rest or anything like that. I just do it for fun. I don't really compete or anything like that. And I do want to mention that each club normally has their own rules. There are tons of different rules and variations on these sort of competitions here. So if my score doesn't completely tally up with yours, that's probably why. But with that said, that's pretty much going to do it for this particular video. So thank you very much for watching. I hope it's been interesting or useful, and we'll see you in the next one.